From July, you'll be allowed to take your dog to the hair salon.
Cost of living crisis, but you can take your dog to the hairdresser, Chewie. This is
also the third time he's announced this over the space of months and months and months.
Honestly, cost of living, laser focused on the cost of living, laser focused. Now you can have a cup of tea while they cut your hair.
Or barber, and have a tea or coffee while you're getting a trim. David Seymour's given the chop to so-called 80s era rules. The change is coming after a review recommended all existing regulations for the sector be scrapped, although some are questioning how strictly they were enforced in the first place.
Yeah.
Jacob John.
So basically the nutshell, the summation of the story is no one knew what these regs were and no one obeyed them anyway, but hey, we've got rid of them. I've just given you a bit of a clue of the lie that's about to come up.
Johnson reports.
A full scalp scrub for David Seymour.
This is a much higher standard than I've experienced in recent times.
With the sector now set to get a makeover of its own.
Most of the rules are either so silly they're ignored or so obvious they're being done anyway.
So they're ignored or they're being followed. So there's actually no reason to spend any time, effort, money, energy on doing this. We are laser focused on the cost of living, people.
Meaning absolutely no value is generated.
The scrap rules include mandates on the spacing of seats and the brightness of the lights, as well as a ban on serving drinks in cutting areas and bringing dogs into the shop. David Seymour says the changes will save the industry around $1 million a year in compliance costs, and now it'll be up to the business owner to decide how they operate.
We are going to allow a dog if they can behave. If they can't behave, then not.
A beer or a wine remains off the cards for now.
If you're allowed a wee brewski while you have your head trimmed, I reckon that should be a choice you can make.
The government's set to decide whether alcohol can be served at salons later this year.
There's no firm decision to do that, but the Ministry for Regulation has said, this is crazy, just let people...
No, notice how I said that? The Ministry for Regulation said. So he's citing an expert body which he set up and is his pet project. So he's basically saying, my pet project says...
For Regulation has said, this is crazy, just let people have a drink.
The 5-month review itself cost around $500,000, but many shops weren't even aware of the rules that have now been scrapped.
Right. Here comes the lie. You see it up. So what they're saying is no one knew what the rules were. Now, Chewie, if no one knows what the rules are, how many times do you think they'd talk to David Seymour about it? No one knew what the rules were. How often would people engage with David Seymour if no one knew what the rules are? Well, let's see what David Seymour says about that.
The 5-month review itself cost around $500,000, but many shops weren't even aware of the rules that have now been scrapped.
The only way that they were enforced was on a yearly registration through council, so they weren't enforced anyway. A lot of members weren't really sure of sort of how those rules were to work.
I had no clue.
Whenever I go to a salon and I ask them, what would you like? They say, get rid of the red tape and regulation.
What?
I'm calling bullshit.
Government policy by random anecdote.
Nobody knew about the rules. Nobody adhered to the rules. But every time David went to a salon, he got overwhelmed with people saying, oh, could you please get rid of this red tape and let us just cut hair? Because at the moment we can't with all this red tape.
Whenever I go to a salon and I ask them, what would you like? They say, get rid of the red tape and regulation.
There are some trade-offs. There'll be no monitoring or enforcement of hygiene, sanitation or disinfection practices.
Oh, okay. That's a little bit that they left out. Did you get that, people? You know how you go into a restaurant and they've got a rating for their health, ABC. It's the same with any kind of industry where they have this sort of operation because, they're touching people's heads and they've got to, guess what, from now on, part of this regulation, what they do actually get rid of. All the health conditions, all the things that public health officers would want to make sure that a place is. So cockroaches are also included with your dogs. Maybe that's why dogs weren't allowed in there because what they could bring in with them. So basically what they're doing is getting rid of all the stuff that didn't matter and nobody knew about. And then in the back of the pack, they're getting rid of all the stuff that are important to public health. Have a listen to that list again.
There are some trade-offs. There'll be no monitoring or enforcement of hygiene, sanitation or disinfection practices.
hygiene, sanitation,
none of that's
disinfectant practices. So the good thing for the salons is they can just use the same comb on every single person's hair without disinfecting it, because there's no more need to do that. They're not going to be checking up on this.
Officials will work with the Ministry of Health on guidance around this to manage public health risks. However, the sector says other changes are needed.
The one thing that Hair and Barber really pushed for was the regulation of the individual and the qualification, and that hasn't been addressed here.
Still some gaps in an industry that's just had a big trim.
That's weird, eh? The industry is saying the one thing we did want to look at, they didn't. And the one thing they did look at was all the stuff we didn't know about and no one adhered to. Oh, and by the way, we're not going to clean our combs anymore because no one's going to be checking up, Chewie.
I can't wait to get scabies. Yeah, look, that's... What is Seymour's distraction here? Because again, he's announced this 3 fucking times. And the only reason that it's on my radar is the barber I used to go to in Wellington used to offer me a beer while they gave me a trim. Yep. And then someone from the department came around and told them that they couldn't anymore. And it just seemed to be a minimal thing. They were just like, oh, okay, we didn't know we couldn't do that without a liquor license. Sure. But yeah, when is it important? Is this going to unlock the true potential of the New Zealand economy? That I can apparently take my well-behaved dog into a barber's? Why the fuck would I do that, by the way? That's mental.
You take your dog so it could do a shit in the corner, because the thing about it, when it does do a shit in the corner, the health departments aren't going to check up on it anymore because all the health stuff's been taken away as well, Chewie. That's why you take your dog.
Yeah. It's just madness. But like, yeah, not disinfect. You don't have to disinfect your combs anymore. That's good. Oh, that's going to save so much money, just getting rid of basic cleanliness. I can't wait till Seymour's Ministry of Regulation unlocks the true potential of the New Zealand hospitality sector by getting rid of fucking health grades.
In the grander scheme of things, $500,000 for that is not a lot of money. Now, the only thing I would push back on that is we will hold this government accountable to the promises they made, right? To their own standards. And this is one of the standards they made.
We want a government that cares about how every single dollar is spent, because every single dollar the government spends is ultimately a dollar from your pocket.
Yeah. So pre-election Luxon was very, very keen for every single dollar to be looked after correctly. Post-election Luxon is obviously more than happy for $500,000 to go into something which from the outset looks like a way to get rid of health regulations. That actually looks like it's all it is that it's a way that they can get away with hairdressers and barbers not being checked up on for their health, how healthy their businesses are. That's what it looks like to me.